So about the digital touch sensations. And effectively, one of the items that is not really well known, but it's extremely important, we believe, to specifically share at the beginning of this talk is that haptics today cannot simulate. What does that mean? That means that today's haptic technology is not capable to recreate in the full capability the touch sensations that you feel today while interacting with everyday objects. I have here an example. So if you think about haptics that is able to recreate the sense of touching silk, that's simply impossible today. And even in 10 years, there's really big chances that this will not be possible. And if you're interested to understand why, there is a source here and one wonderful paper written by VEZZOLI and VEZZOLI in 2019, which analyzes the requirements to be able to, the technological requirements to be able to render realistically touch sensations. And they are so far away from today's technology capabilities that we can say that they are science fiction. However, what we can, why we are here to discuss, because haptics technology can be super useful if we extract ourselves from a simulation perspective. So within this course, we will talk about how haptics technology can support the development of compelling XR content without the need to simulate. So what haptics can do in XR if done properly? Haptics in XR, if done properly, can increase user engagement, increase user immersion and sense of presence, decrease user fatigue, decrease dizziness, and increase the effectiveness of XR training. On purpose, I didn't put any number here because research around this added value is not yet conclusive. There is indication that these activities, this value are brought by haptics. However, I'm hardly able to cite a conclusive article for each one of these one that is incontestable. But the indications go through that users, while using haptic-enabled XR content, find value, and they report this kind of feedback while they finish to use haptic-enabled content. The second item for haptics in XR is that every extended reality headset or virtual reality headset have two controllers which are equipped with haptics actuators, and are usually good quality haptic actuators, and they are really hardly ever used. Our feedback about that point is that we believe that they are hardly ever used because there is a little knowledge about how to design haptics and to implement haptics in the use cases. And this is what this talk and the company Interhaptics, which I belong to, would like to solve in the long run. So to approach this problem, this presentation is organized as following. We have a flyover generic use cases for haptics in XR that makes sense. So where the haptics can bring value to extended reality content. Then we will go through a little bit haptics perception and really a really large and broad understanding of how haptics works, haptic and touch perception works, and then we'll bring together these two items with use case on one side and haptics perception on the other side to develop together. We will do a live demonstration on how we can develop compelling haptics content for XR with the haptics design tool from Interhaptics. So the generic haptics where the generic use case in XR where haptics brings value are, some of them may know, some of you may know them, some of them not. The first one is UI touch feedback and confirmations. We will see them later. What is it? We have user immersion. This is probably the most standard. Remote presence, user awareness, and notification. So let's start with the first. Where in extended reality haptics can bring value. Effectively, we saw there in UI confirmation. Let me maybe switch on my camera at this moment so that I'll be able to do some mimicking. Okay, I cannot start my video because the host cannot allow it. That's not important. So let's go through the presentation. So the UI confirmation is easily the feedback that you get when you're taking a document. That's simple. Or you are typing on your keyboard, you are maybe running a slider or control, or on the other way around, you are rotating a control knobs. The UI confirmation of haptics is when in extended reality I perform this action, I receive a feedback that tells me that the action has been well performed. So this is the first use case. It's one of the most basic one, but still today there is a lot of keyboards for virtual reality that don't include haptic feedback. And if you had the chances to feel the difference between a haptic enabled keyboard and a keyboard which is not haptic enabled, you understand straightforward that the user experience with haptics implementation is much, much more compelling. The second case is a user immersion. So is use haptics.
I authorize the video to all. I'm very sorry.
I make sense, Konstantin. I didn't understand your question. Apologies. Can you please repeat?
I authorize to use the video for any panelists, for all the panelists. I'm sorry for.
Don't worry. I'll be switching it off right now. So let me. Start here. Fantastic. So you can see me now. Wonderful. Check the camera because I will be using my hands to do some mimicking here. So user immersion, we have effectively the use of haptics to increase the sense of immersion of the user. Here we are a little bit nearer the simulation. Also use haptics to simulate, or at least to reproduce in reality or in virtual reality something of the sensation that we have in reality. So we can use haptics, for example, in gaming for enhance the first-person shooter we see here at pistol, or during an animated scenes of 360 videos, we see here a war scene to enhance the presence of enhance the sense of presence of the user due to the fact there's guns and there are noises, or through the interaction with levers, or through the enriching texturing of real material while exploring them. So this is a complete use case for haptics that have the objective to increase the quality of the perceived experience by the user. Then we have haptics for remote presence. Here is the objective for the use of haptics is for supplying a remote sense of presence of yourself. So we have, for example, the handshake, which is the basics for any business meeting today, before COVID, of course. And the sense of presence of the person in front of you is one of the reasons by which this handshaking existed. Today, with haptics technology, we can supply a stand-in for this sense of presence through the use of digital technologies. It is also true to the capability to communicate emotions, and through, for example, emojis with a beating heart, and we can supply these communications through haptic perception, because the beating heart in reality have an intrinsic tactile value, because we hear it, but we can also feel it. And haptic technology can enable to deliver this kind of information. A fourth case is a contextual information. What does that mean? Contextual information is the use of haptics as a sixth sense. For example, use haptics to say there is a danger incoming, or use haptics to share the necessity to turn left or turn right, because remember, in extended reality, we have two controllers, at least the two haptics devices a minimum. So we have geometrical cues that can give to the user, or give information of approaching approaching objects. These are just some of the use cases for contextual awareness. In this case, haptics is used as a sensory substitution. So we supply through the tactile channel to the user a certain kind of information which do not occlude both the visual and the sound channel. Effective. And this is a wonderful use of haptics, which is not at all developed, but in research has shown that there is a really much power into this implementation. What is missing is the knowledge and the capability from the developer community to do this, to leverage this tactile channel for creating a compelling experience. And the last one is probably the most simple use of haptics is the notification for haptics. So you experience it every day when you have your phone in your pocket, it vibrates and it alerts you that something happened. You don't know what happened, so it's not like user aware, it's not like contextual awareness where haptics is used as an information channel. This is just to tell you something happened. And this is probably the most simple use of haptics, and it's what you experience every day. So this is more or less the wrap up for the use cases in XR where haptics make sense. So you could apply these use cases also on different technological platforms like phones or something like that. But in this case, we discuss about it. So the next step would be to go through pretty fast on how touch perception works and how we can leverage the human perception onto designing better haptics. So we said before, touch perception haptics is for the perception of touch. And how does it work? It's fairly simple and complicated at the same time. So I don't know how many of you are familiar with these items, but touch is mostly perceived through the skin and more specifically to tiny mechanical sensors that are embedded on your skin, which are called mechanoreceptors. You have at least 1,000 in a square centimeter on your finger. This mechanoreceptor responds to different mechanical stimuli, which means when I'm poking my skin, what I'm feeling comes from this mechanoreceptor. There are 4 kinds of mechanoreceptor. Some say 3, some say 4. It's not for me to debate these items, but this mechanoreceptor, what they do, they translate mechanical stimulus, so skin indentation like I'm doing here, into nerve spiking. And this nerve spiking are then transmitted all along, for example, if we touch with the finger, all along our arm, through the spine, up to the somatosensory cortex of the brain, and then they're interpreted as a touch stimuli. And the way that this mechanoreceptor spikes or fire is then correlated with the perception that we have. But why I'm telling you that? Because it makes sense then later on the way that we'll approach haptics design. You can understand from this point of view is that all of your body is equipped for this mechanoreceptor. So you can understand why haptic simulation is really hard, because you need to be able to replicate reality all along your body with a really high precision. So for today, we don't yet have the technology to do that. Okay, haptic perception. It's touch perception is divided fundamentally in 2, which is a tactile, which is mediated by skin, a kinesthetic, which is mostly mediated by tendons and receptors, which are in your body, which are not specifically on the skin. The tactile part which is contact location, so where am I feeling my sensation, pressure, how much I'm pushing, shear, it's when I'm pulling and pushing laterally. Slip, it means when I'm slipping down, like the glass that you see over there. Vibration perception is your phone is ringing, and temperature is mostly heat transfer, so how much heat we are receiving. And kinesthetic is mostly position, orientation and force that I'm exerting over an object. So from a technological perspective, haptics is better to divide it in two different families, which is a family which I feel the object. Let's say I have my these small items and I'm feeling the surfaces of it. And the other one is I'm manipulating an object, which are kind of separated from a technological perspective. Why we say so? Because lately, the interaction with virtual objects became more and more natural with the implementation of hand tracking technology, which from a scientific and strictly speaking point are haptic. So when you start to use your hand with interacting with objects, the science that studies that is haptic. But from a technological perspective, you have hand tracking technologies and haptic technologies, which give the feedback to the user. So here we are approaching haptic design, so we need to take into consideration how technology works. And why this makes sense? Because we have devices already on the market. We counted more than 10 different kind of device which couple hand tracking and haptic feedback, which are exoskeleton or haptic flow, where the process of interacting, the process of having haptic feedback are deeply and tightly coupled. Okay, so they enter into the decomposition of haptics that we said before, which is the act of the object. For today, we will talk about I feel the action, which is at the basic needs that is required to understand to be able then to execute properly a haptic design for I act over an object. And I repeat here, we are not looking to simulate. So the haptic design that I'm going to share with you, the haptic process that I'm going to share with you today is not mediated by physics and is not mediated by any kind of simulation. Okay, so that means that it scales well with different classes. It's purely mediated by perception, the perception guidelines. So today we will talk about I feel the action. So I feel object with my hand, so like this texture and other kind of things. So to approach this this process of design, as it was before with sound and as it was before with vision, scientists are looking forward to understand how our haptic perception is composed. Can we decompose our perception of touch into different channels that we can compose and recreate the total touch feedback, the total touch sensation? So, for example, for vision is RGB that we perceive with our eyes. The sound, we have different channels which are superimposed. For touch, this activity is going on since many, many years, but is not yet completed. However, due to the fact that haptic technology today cannot really simulate, but can help us enrich the use case, we can use the current state of the art to draw some design guidelines. More specifically, there is a company which is SIMTouch in California, which developed a wonderful sensor to quantify touch feedback of surfaces, which is classifying this touch feedback into 15 different dimensions. Okay, some of them are related to textures, some of them are compliance related, some of them are heat transfer. And why this is interesting? Because we can use this categorization to extract some upper abstract categories that will help us to design better haptics. More specifically, when we looked about the kind of sensations that this haptic sensor is able to pick up, there are multiple of them which are planar. What does it mean, planar? That means that they are related to me sliding over surfaces. So that are haptic feeling or touch feeling that happen in a flat plane. Then we have others which are perpendicular. So they happen when we are poking or pushing against some material, which are perpendicular to the plane of interaction. And both of these are geometrically encoded. So they are encoded in space. They exist because there is an interaction, and they exist because a space is enabled with haptics or with touch feeling. Then we have a heat transfer over here, which is how much heat we receive. In all of this categorization, of course, as you can see quite soon, we don't have vibrations. Why? Because vibration perception is entirely man-made. It doesn't exist in nature beside earthquakes or different other activities. So vibration perception, and more specifically, haptics actuators today, you are usually mediated by vibrations, but vibration is not a natural thing. But from the purpose of haptics design, it's a really important channel that everybody is accustomed to use today. And it's necessary to consider it for designing great haptics experiences in it. So what does that mean? We see here that we have 4 big groups. We have perpendicular sensations, we have a planar sensation, we have a heat transfer, and we have vibration. If we put them together, what happens? We have 4 different big categories that represent 4 high-level categories of touch perception, mediated by technology, of course. It's not real touch perception, it's touch perception mediated by technology through how technology can actually deliver touch feedback. Okay, so we have this division, and we did in the company a lot of talk with touch neuroscientists that help us to categorize these items. And we have these 4 different perceptions. We have effectively what we call texture, which are planar sensations, like texture, which usually are periodical in space, so that help us to being able to render this sensation. We have stiffnesses, which are perpendicular over the skin. We have vibrations, which are temporal patterns, and we have effectively temperature or heat transfer. While having this high-level subdivision, we have effectively what we have here, a haptic design tool. This haptic design tool is a system that allows a user to design touch feelings and touch sensations in a graphical manner. And we effectively, what we did, we divided the capability of design of our haptic design tool into 4 different perceptions: textures, which are planar system, which you see here over a small video; stiffnesses, which are perpendicular. We have a thermal and heat transfer system, which today are not yet activated because we have there's not a lot of devices which allow to have heat transfer. However, we just discovered that there is one on the market today, so it's starting to picking up, and there is vibration feedback. Okay, so this haptics design tool is a part of Interhaptics, which is the company I belong to, and allow the graphical creation of haptic feedback for the specific use case. Okay, so this concludes the second part of the talk, which is about haptics perception and how can we use our understanding of touch feeling to create a design pipeline for the sensor. The next section will be about 2 practical use cases that we will develop in real time with the haptic design tool to be able to understand how to use the tool, and specifically what are some tricks that will help us to design haptics. Before moving forward, I would like to know if there is some questions after the second section, and this will help me to shape a little bit better the practical use case development. Is everything okay? If there is nothing, nothing else. I don't see the participants. I just see the panelists. I don't know if there is someone which would like to ask something. Okay, seems that is it seems that is fine. So as for the next step, we move forward and we will try to design a texture feedback. A texture feedback for a virtual system. You see here a Unity screen. Some of you are familiar with this, which is the development system that is used to create virtual reality experiences. And effectively, what we want to recreate is a texture which will help the user to feel immersed while sliding over. A haptic texture. This is a virtual texture, and what you visual texture. What you see here, this is a brick. Okay. So what we'll be doing right now, I will be opening my haptics design tool, and we will go and design the haptics feedback for this texture. One second, I open it. Oh. Okay, so we have our haptic composer here. Okay, this is the same program that you saw before. This haptic composer is a standard graphical user interface where you see right now it's empty. How can we start the design process? Haptic sensations are, we define them as a haptic material, which are files which encode the digital sensor touch. So we have a file new, and we create a new haptic material, which is called bricks. Okay, we save it on our desktop, and okay. When we save and we create the haptics, the first haptic material, we see that the three different perceptions that are today active, texture, stiffness, vibrations, you can go and select them. And you have a graphical space when you can create a haptic feeling and a material property. In our case, we want to focus over the texture feeling because the brick, we have it here, in reality have a texture feeling. Or at least in our process of designing haptics, we would like to enlighten the texture feeling. So the haptics composer here is developed with a superimposition of different haptic nodes, which composed at the end create haptic feeling, the haptic and the final haptic harmony. In this case, will be the final haptic texture. So here on the right, we have a preview of the haptics texture, which we will enlarge here, and this will help us to understand better what we are doing. Okay, we put it back here. We'll take it back later. So the brick, in our case, let's imagine that in Unity this brick is long 40 centimeters. Okay, so the first things that we want to know is that how long is my texture? We want it long as the brick. Here we are in meter. We see it here, and what we do, we go to. We said it was 40 centimeters. We go to 0.4. Okay. So what we are represented here, 40 centimeters, where we can design how we want haptics to be. And in this case, we have the brick over the left. So we have which bricks is from a tactile point of view is developed through the interfaces that we have over here and a surface inside which gives the feeling of a texture. So it's actually divided in 5 different areas which we can represent over the haptic composer. So we have the first interface, the internal texture, the second interface, and the final texture. So I created fundamentally 5 different areas within my haptics composer. Usually when we slide over it, we have a strong sensation at the beginning of the brick that signals the starting of the texture. So we can create a strong signal at the beginning. Okay. Here we can create a strong signal at the beginning through generating a pulse, a haptic pulse, which is encoded in space. That means that if you slide your finger over it, you will feel this pulse. Oh, my video is off. So if you feel it, we feel this pulse. The same feeling is present in any of the interfaces, because if you go back here, we see that we have on the left, in the center, and on the right, we have the beginning, the central, and the end of the haptic feeling. And similarly, we can create it on the bottom, top right. If we see our haptic texture here, our preview, what will you see? say simply that we have a surface for here that have a bump at the beginning, no haptic feeling in the center, a bump in the center, no haptic feeling, and bump at the end. However, the brick texture, when you're sliding over the material, gives you some tickling, gives you some high feeling. Can we represent them in extended reality in some way? And this goes through the generation of a haptic pattern, a dense haptic pattern between the two initial bumps. So we create a haptic pattern, a sinusoidal haptic pattern that helps you to encode a little bit these slight vibrations or slight feeling that you have while sliding over the brick, over the brick. We are not adding so many other information because one of the things to keep in mind when you are designing haptics is that less is more. That means you don't need to overcharge the haptics channel with too many haptics information because it will confound the user. Because remember that we are not simulating, we are using haptics technologies to supplement the experience. If you add too much, then what we generate is confusion within the user. So for a first implementation, we see at the end here that we have a reasonable haptic material to start to iterate with. Okay, this haptic material, we see it over here. We have effectively the three bumps that are related to the three different initial, middle, and the end of the material. And we have the generation of a dense spatial haptic feeling between the different bumps that can represent the sliding over the brick surface. So this is more or less the first, the end of the first use case, which is using haptics to supplement user immersion, or in this case, for the generation of a texture, a haptic text. So we can use this tool for example, creating also UI and widths, because when you're sliding over a slider, if you want to give the spatial advancement of the user while he's sliding, we can supplement this through haptics by the design of a texture. But there are many different use cases, and we will be releasing a Udemy course next week about haptics design, where if you're interested, you will be able to follow the Udemy course with 5 different practical implementation of these use cases with Unity and with the capability to download assets and test in real time what's going on and iterate. I forgot to mention that one of the assets of this Haptic Composer is the capability on the bottom right here to open a virtual reality lab and test in real time the haptics that you are creating. So you will be able to test it, to slide your controller over the virtual surface, and in that moment you will be able to feel the haptic feedback, and you will be able to iterate on your haptic material till you reach the feeling that you would like your content to have. So this goes for the first use cases. The first use case, which is the user immersion. In this case, we developed a haptic texture. Let's go for the second. The second use case is contextual awareness. Okay, how can we use haptics for contextual awareness? In this case, we have a 2D representation. In this case, it's a small game where what happens is that the user is controlling this interface. Okay, and this interface is needs to be made jump when these balls are approaching the user. Okay, but you would like to make it without the user looking. How can we do it? So we need to supplement the information to the user, or by audio or by haptics. In this case, we would like to use it by haptics. We can apply the use cases for the contextual information left and right, but this is a really simple case which allows us quickly to iterate the possibility. So let's open our Haptic Composer over here. In this case, we don't want to use textures because textures are space-based. Here, we don't have any exploration of the space. Here, we want to supplement the user and information when an event happens. So the best for using that is developing a vibration pattern. Okay, so let's cancel our let's move from texture. We go to vibrations. Okay, vibration feedback is a vibration which is a feedback which is encoded in time. Okay, so as for the texture, they have a similar way to be developed because they are developed in different pistes. In this case, we add the first piste over here. Let's just add one to keep it simple. You can complexify as you want. Effectively, what we do want to know, give to the user, is the understanding that this ball is approaching him and he would need to jump at a certain point. So what can we use? We can use a tactile pattern, which it becomes more and more dense, more this ball is approaching. So let's divide our our texture, sorry, our vibration feeling into different sections. Okay, we can then move this section as we We imagine that this tactile pattern will belong to 2 seconds. So right now we have 1 second length. We put it at 2, so we increase it to 2 here. And in this case, we would like to start, because in our design mindset, this makes sense for the use case, with a gentle pattern, okay, a really gentle pattern at the beginning, which gives the user the first feeling that something happened. Then we give him a pause, and then we increase the strength of the pattern by increasing the frequency of repetition of our vibrations, as well as about the height, so the power of our vibration. So the height of these lines gives me how strong is my vibration. So we increase the repetition and the strength, and we do this for 4 times, and we allow the user to get aware that something is incoming and is coming nearer, and this is coming nearer is encoded between the height of our vibration and the frequency of repetition of vibration. So in this case, we will go up a little bit more. Yep, I think the meeting crashed. So I was continuing the talk. So I will continue, and I'm almost at the end. I'm not sure if there will be, okay, I cannot share my video. I'll be resharing my screen and move forward again. Okay. Okay, what we were selling. We were selling, what we were talking about. We were defining the use case for contextual awareness, and so we wanted to include the contextual awareness, so the approaching of the ball to the user, and we decided to use an increasing number of haptic pulses with increasing strength as a function of the time that is passing from this ball to approaching to you. Let's say it appears and you want to add haptics. And we close with a really, really strong and a stronger set of pulses that will allow the user to get his final awareness that the ball is coming and is ready to lose if it doesn't jump. Okay, so this tactile pattern that you see represented here on the bottom right, as we discussed, can be tested in the OpenVR lab, in the VR lab, or can be saved as a material that we showed before and imported in Unity. As we discussed, this I already shared this practical lesson. There will be in a Udemy course in Haptics Design for XR that we will publish next week, and you will be able to, if you're interested, you will be able to test them and learn how to use this tool to solve your haptics, to solve your XR or increase your XR content with the use of haptics. So at the end, as a key takeaways of this talk, I know it was a little bit rushed and was not so super straight and super stable due to my misunderstanding of the starting date of the talk, as well as some technical issues with Zoom. I thank you again, Jean-Philippe, for the invite. Is that haptics helps to reinforce and enhance the user experience in XR. As we discussed before, I cannot give you scientifically proven numbers there, but these are quite broad feedback from the user when using a haptic-enabled content. I know that there are several studies for the use of haptics in XR that are ongoing that will support these claims. The process to design haptics can take inspiration from reality, but you cannot approach it as a simulation of reality, because haptics technology today is not capable of simulating, and you would be not satisfied by the results if you look for realism. But haptics can be wonderful to improve the quality of the haptics content if you use it to enrich and sustain the use case instead than to try to replicate reality. However, the design process can get a lot of information and a lot of inspiration from reality, like the designing of texture while you're sliding on material and something like that. And the third point is that effectively the haptic composer of Interhaptics, we created specifically to be able to allow fast iteration on haptics prototyping and implementation, and allow users to have a graphical capability to create haptic feeling over 4 different sensations, which are textures, thicknesses, vibrations, patterns, and heat transfer. And with this slide, I close my talk, and I will be able to take any question if you might have one. Do not hesitate to share and to ask anything that you might be interested in from your side.
Thank you, Eric. I'm sorry for these technical problems we have. I don't know exactly what's happened, but things connection is established again. I have a question. It is well known that the virtual reality in some case could bring confusion because different human perceptions work in contradictions. For example, in image with acceleration and so on. Could haptics help in this relation, or vice versa? Could haptics be also wrong and bring the user in even more confusion?
So thanks for the question. It's a really great question. So user dizziness, it happens because there is a sensory mismatch. So that is, our body expects something and it doesn't experience. So this is true also for haptics. With touch, we are adding another sense. So if you use it correctly, it will help to reduce the user confusion and sensory dizziness. If we use it without thinking about it, it can have the contrary effect, which is increasing the confusion for the user. So the answer is, it depends how the designers and how the developer use it. And one of the objectives that we have with Interhaptics is to help developer and designer design great haptics. That means to not generate a sensory confusion for the user.
Thank you. Awesome. But do you know some tricks, for example, or probably you know some publication we can learn about how in practice we can learn how to do correct stuff?
Yes. So the way to do correct is to respect this is our point of view. The way to do correct is to respect human perception. So we show it over here. Over here. So why did we did this few minutes discussing about human haptic perception? Because to design great haptics, you need to design great haptics for human. And in this case, we have regrouped the texture and the stiffness feeling are by design haptics which is coherent with human perception because they are a space encoded in space. So both texture and stiffness will help reduce the confusion for the user because both of them are geometrical based and then are applied just if, for example, you are sliding your hands on the texture or you are controlling a lever with the stiffness on the So both texture and stiffness development as well as implementation in VEZZOLI, I cannot tell you quantitatively because I don't have the studies, but from a logical point of view will help to have a better immersion, so reduce the confusion for the user. Vibrations patterns will need to be used carefully because vibrations is, as we discussed before, is not a sensation which is present in nature. So vibrations, if not done properly, can bring to sensory confusion and diffuse. However, the only things to really be able to conclude on that is to implement some testing. What it can generate confusion is the use of vibrations which are not well time matched with the event that you would like to enhance. For example, you would like to execute the feedback of clicking a button. The length of the vibrations pattern as well as the delay that this vibration pattern needs to have before happening, there it's important that they are on time and really well time locked and really short because that's what happens in reality. So we always share with someone who wants to start to do haptic design is take inspiration from reality and try to understand what in reality would happen. And by using these three different implementations, take inspiration from that and create a haptic feedback, which have the same characteristics, but of course it's not a simulation. That is this answer to your question.
Yes, okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Is there another question from the participants? You can raise your hand if you want, no problem.
Some other question, guys?
Okay, so I think that I hope that it was an interesting talk for all of you, and do not hesitate to connect with me over LinkedIn if you want to discuss more. And I would like to thank again for the possibility to speak to this conference. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you.